It's 8 p.m. in the Middle East, 1 p.m. in New York. Welcome to the lineup. I'm Michal, Divon. The Democratic National Convention kicks off today on a divisive note, with a furor over embarrassing leaked documents that show the Democratic committee in favor of Hillary Clinton, well before the nomination was clinched. Democratic National Committee head Debbie Wasserman Schultz resigns following more than 19,000 DNC emails show party officials working to undermine Senator Bernie Sanders' campaign. The FBI is now looking into it. Clinton supporters are blaming Russia for the leaks, and all of this even before the convention began. Owen Alterman tries to create some order in the Democratic Party disorder.
They thought they'd be united, or maybe not. Democrats at odds with each other on their convention's opening day. The trigger, a trove of 19,000 emails released by WikiLeaks, showing Democratic Party officials favoring Hillary Clinton and not Bernie Sanders during the primaries.
Well, I think I told you long time ago that the DNC was not running a fair operation, that they were supporting Secretary Clinton. So what I suggested to be true 6 months ago turns out, in fact, to be true. I'm not shocked, but I am disappointed.
In the crossfire, Democratic National Committee Chairwoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Sanders called on her to resign. Under pressure, she did so. But Sanders diehards are still restless.
Really pissed off, but not surprised at all, because Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Hillary Clinton are a couple of flakes. You can't trust them.
Most Sanders supporters plan to vote for Clinton, polls show, but some 20% could defect to a third-party candidate. Sanders' grassroots activists could be an asset to Clinton, giving her time and money for the campaign. That now seems less likely. And another wrinkle in the emails controversy: the Clinton campaign pointing a finger at Russian intelligence. The charge? Trump is more dovish toward Russia, so Moscow wants Trump to win. Russian hackers break into Democratic servers. WikiLeaks then outs the emails on the eve of the convention. The Trump campaign responding.
Are there any ties between Mr. Trump, you or your campaign, and Putin and his regime?
No, there are not. It's absurd, and there's no basis to it.
Democrats will now try to move on to their day one lineup, a marquee roster of speakers. Liberal standard bearer Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, First Lady Michelle Obama, and Sanders himself. American media will be looking at how far he goes in praising Clinton, unifying a party, if it can be done.
And we're going live now to Philadelphia, where our very own Ami Kaufman joins us from the Democratic National Convention. Ami, a shaky opening night for the Democrats. What are the feelings right now? I see that you're still standing outside.
Yeah, we're still standing outside. We'll go in later to the convention arena. As you mentioned, things have gone to a shaky start even before the convention started, Michal. Debbie Wasserman Schultz resigned yesterday. She was pretty much forced to resign after that email scandal. Another email scandal after, of course, the Clinton email scandal. Now we have the Debbie Wasserman Schultz email scandal, the DNC email scandal, showing that the DNC pretty much was in favor of Hillary Clinton the whole time, just as Bernie Sanders mentioned all the way long. It's going to be a very ununified beginning. Progressives are angry. They are actually outside of the convention hall. Large groups of protesters protesting outside the convention hall as we speak right now, saying that they will not vote for Hillary Clinton. And this comes after, by the way, Hillary Clinton's choice of her vice presidential nominee, Tim Kaine, who is a very conservative Democrat. They were hoping that she would pick someone more progressive, like Tom Perez or Elizabeth Warren. So that's pretty much like two slaps in the face in the space of a week. Progressives are probably going to vent quite a bit at this convention.
And Ami, a lot of uncertainty this night, as you mentioned, and I think the much anticipated speech is that of Senator Bernie Sanders. And the big question, of course, is will he be changing his tone? He is still endorsing her, but he also said that he did not receive any official apology. Will this affect what he will be saying?
That's a very, very good question. I have a feeling that Bernie Sanders is going to be welcomed with a pretty large applause at the stadium. The Democrats have a lot of very high-profile surrogates that are going to start today. The heavy guns are going to be brought out today. Like you mentioned, Bernie Sanders, but also Elizabeth Warren, and ending the night, Michelle Obama. I think it's going to help show a unified party right on day one. But as you mentioned, it's important to see how Bernie Sanders is exactly going to address this, if he will address it even now.
Ami Kaufman, I want to thank you for now. We'll be back later with you this evening. And joining me now in studio is Sheldon Shore, a member of the Democratic Party. Thank you for joining us today. A big evening for you, but a shaky start, as many are calling it. How is this going to affect the party? Is it going to hurt the Democratic Party? And how will it maintain its unity?
Well, unity is one separate issue. It's actually right now the main issue that we have to think. But, you know, the party is much stronger than just a small attack. I mean, this business of some people in the leadership being in favor of one candidate as opposed to other is not surprising. Bernie Sanders is not a mainstream Democrat. He is, in fact, anti the establishment, whereas Hillary Clinton represented the mainstream establishment. She was as closely identified with the establishment as anybody possibly could, having been in the White House with her husband for 8 years and
but
having served as Secretary of State.
Sorry for cutting you off. This is really starting the convention this is the wrong start for the convention. This is very bad timing for the Democrats to have these leaked documents. What is your reaction to that?
You think that's just a coincidence? How come the email leaks happened exactly now when it hurts the most and not, say, a week ago or 2 weeks ago? Someone is playing games here.
Exactly. And fingers are being pointed at the Russians. What's your take?
I don't know the Russians. Somebody is playing games here, and someone is trying to first of all, this business of some of the establishment being in favor of one against the other is not surprising. We just saw this now with the Republicans, right, where the mainstream Republicans were doing all sorts of things during the last few weeks of the last few months of the primary to try to derail Donald Trump. They've also done this before with Romney when they were putting up a different candidate to see who might stop the more moderate Romney. They kept putting on conservative people. This happens, and this is not at all surprising. Meanwhile, let's face it, Sanders ran a campaign all the ways to the end, as long as he wanted to. No one forcibly stopped him. I don't know of any dirty tricks that were involved. So I don't pay a lot to this.
Debbie Wasserman-Schultz does resign, and there are, of course, questions to be raised. Why is she resigning if nothing was wrong? We'll talk about this in just a moment. Meanwhile, more violence in the United States. At least 2 people have been killed, aged 14 and 18, with dozens injured in Florida after a mass shooting at a nightclub. A gunman entering Club Blue in Fort Myers, opening fire, hitting people as young as 13 years old. 3 people are taken in for questioning as investigators try to piece together details of this latest attack. ABC News has the story.
Police and paramedics rushing to a teen dance party that ended in a hail of gunfire, killing a 14 and 18-year-old.
Engine 13, possible shooting in Club Blue, Fort Myers. We're getting reports of multiple people.
Club goers scrambled for cover, and eyewitnesses say they were shocked.
Never in my life, never. It's the first time I've been in that situation.
A night of partying for 12 to 17-year-olds turned deadly in the parking lot of the Club Blue in Fort Myers, Florida, just after midnight.
Everybody was running through the apartments, behind it. Everybody was ducking down.
Tatiana Holloman telling ABC News she was visiting an apartment across the street from the club when she heard the gunshots from at least 2 gunmen.
We heard the gunshots. It sounded like it was 2 different guns. There was more than one shooter.
According to eyewitnesses, about 100 people were there at the time, and as many as 19, mostly teenagers, were rushed to the hospital.
They have potentially life-threatening injuries.
And to discuss this, Trimel Gomes, host of Rutland Podcast, joins us from Tallahassee, Florida. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Thanks for having me.
So what are the latest details about the possible motive and who may be behind this attack?
Well, it's still unclear, but indications are that this may be an isolated local incident. There's speculation whether it was gang violence or just someone being disgruntled. It's more linked to something of a gang nature from all the indications so far. As you've been reporting, the terrorism suspicions have been ruled out. So that's what we know so far. The governor of Florida has diverted his schedule, and he made his way to Fort Myers. And as you can imagine, with that situation there, everyone's on heightened alert in fear that it would have turned out to be a terrorist incident.
Exactly. And Shrimal, after the Orlando shooting, another nightclub is being targeted, this time during teen nights with children, really, as young as 13 being heard. What's the panic level on the streets at these times?
Well, with everyone and the attention that the story is getting, that's an indication of the panic level, because we're all fearful that this is another terrorist attack, and we're glad to see that it was been ruled out, but it's still a tragedy. And some are pointing, of course, making the link to the rise of gun violence and the push for gun laws to be reformed, but that seems to be, again, on deaf ears.
Shrimal Gomes, thank you very much for joining us. We'll leave it at that. And Sheldon, Mr. Shore, I'm wondering, what's your take on what he had to say, seeing that these events are taking place and, of course, shaping the rhetoric that the campaign nominees are going to have? How is this going to affect the elections, and how will this again raise the whole issue of gun control? Do you see this as something that could strengthen Trump?
Look, strengthen Trump, I would hope that it would weaken Trump. I would hope that the American people would be so disgusted with all this shooting and all the violence because of guns in the hands of crazy people who don't have self-control. You know, they say if you keep the guns out of the hands of private citizens and only go to criminals, well, that's the ones who really should have the guns, only the criminals. And then, by the way, if you see someone with a gun, you can shoot him because he's a criminal. But the people, ordinary people, yes, they should have guns. It's in the Second Amendment. No problem with that. But it doesn't say unlicensed, unregistered, without restriction. Anybody can get it, even crazy people, even insane people, even children. No, there should be limitations. And the fact that there aren't is one of the things that leads to this sort of horrible mass shootings.
And I do want to point you at the latest CNN poll that does show that Trump has a considerable lead at this point over Hillary Clinton. And with these violent spurges and terror attacks taking place, on one hand, right, it could point questions at stricter gun controls, but Trump is being seen as the person who's willing to crack down and really take the necessary security measures to secure the American people.
It's a sad thing that the many Republicans, like Mr. Trump, seem to think that the Second Amendment is so much more important than the Third, than the Fourth, and the Fifth, and the Sixth Amendments, which could restrict police activity and give individual rights to citizens, like to a fair trial and against the right of self-incrimination. And they would like to crack down, take away these civil liberties. And this is getting very close to right-wing dictatorships. And the whole tenor of the Republican convention of scare tactics, everything is horrible, and only the savior, Trump, can save you. That is a
Sheldon
scary
Shore,
ring.
sorry for cutting you off. I want to thank you at this point. We're going to go live now to Philadelphia, where Senator Bernie Sanders is speaking.
History. As all of you will recall, when we began this campaign over a year ago, we were considered to be fringe players by the establishment and the corporate media. Well, a year has come and gone. We're not fringe players anymore. We have shown the entire world that our ideas are not some crazy, wild, utopian fantasies. They are ideas supported by working people from one end of this country to the other. We showed that the American people want a bold, progressive agenda that takes on the billionaire class that fights for racial, social, economic, and environmental justice, and that will create a government that represents all Americans and not just a handful of wealthy campaign contributors. We won 13 million votes across this country, and more importantly, in virtually every state that we competed, we won by a considerable margin, the young people of this country. We won the votes from young people who are white, who are black, who are Latino, who are Asian American, who are Native American. Young people, by definition, are the future of America. We have set the agenda for the future of America. We won 23 Democratic primary and caucus contests. We won over 1,800 pledged delegates. Welcome to Philadelphia.
Mr. Shore, it seems that Bernie Sanders, the much-anticipated speech, is actually diverted to his supporters, speaking about his own campaign. What's your reaction to this?
He's talking about his campaign, but I think he's also talking more about the issues. He came with an issue-oriented campaign. He wanted certain things to happen, and I think that's the reason he fought to the very end, because he believes in his issues. I don't know if it's necessarily, I don't think he has personal ambitions to become president or to become Secretary of State or anything like that, but I think he does deeply, deeply care about those issues, and he wants to bring those issues to the attention and wants to have that within the agenda, wants to have that in the platform, and I applaud him for it.
Mr. Sheldon Shore, I want to thank you for weighing in this evening.
Pleasure.
Thank you for being with us. Now tonight, Germany on edge after an unprecedented string of attacks. In the latest claimed by the Islamic State, the bomber, a 27-year-old Syrian national asylum seeker, detonated himself outside a music festival in the southern city of Ansbach. More in the next report by Danny Swibel.
Germany is on edge. 4 attacks in 1 week, 3 by Syrian refugees, many dead and injured, with mounting pressure on the German government to quell the violence. The latest attack at a music festival in the Bavarian town of Ansbach, where a 27-year-old Syrian refugee blew himself up near the entrance. 2 people were killed and another 12 injured. Also on Sunday, a machete attack by a Syrian asylum seeker in the town of Reutlingen, resulting in the death of a pregnant Polish woman. The Ansbach bomber recorded a cell phone video pledging allegiance to the Islamic State. Many residents wonder how the attacker so easily operated.
On the bomber's mobile phone, there is a corresponding video of the perpetrator issuing an attack threat in Arabic, for which we now have received a first translation from an interpreter. According to this, he pledges in the name of Allah his allegiance to the well-known Islamic leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi and expressly announces an act of revenge against the Germans because they are standing in the way of Islam and as retribution for the killing of Muslims.
Meanwhile, the doors of the Munich shopping mall where 9 people were killed in a shooting reopened as people continued laying flowers and candles at its entrance. An 18-year-old German-Iranian born and raised locally perpetrated the attack, triggering a lockdown in the Bavarian state capital.
It is weird, very weird. I am often around as I know some people here, so it feels weird. We have to overcome it, but it's an impressive feeling.
The week of violence started with an attack on July 18th when a teenager from Afghanistan wielding an axe injured 5 people on a train before being shot dead by police. Islamic State claimed responsibility for this attack. In response, German Chancellor Angela Merkel convened an emergency security cabinet meeting to address the violence and calm the public, wary over Merkel's decision to accept over 1 million refugees last year.
And we're now joined from Berlin by journalist Mike Samuel Delberg. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Hello.
Hello. So the latest attacker pledged allegiance to the Islamic State. What more do we know from the investigation?
We know it's the first suicide bombing attack which we had here in Germany, so it's a quite new situation for the German government to cope with that. It's a 27-year-old Syrian who was actually rejected to live here in Germany. Since 1 year, he is living here without any permission. He is just he should go to. He was supposed to go to Bulgaria, but the problem was because he couldn't go there, he had to stay in Germany. So the problems with the politics are now how can we cope with people who were rejected to live here in Germany, but still have to stay here because of the situation in Syria.
Exactly. Yeah, you mentioned that he did not leave, but he's not really forced to leave, even though his asylum request was rejected. What reaction can we expect at this point from German authorities after a very shaky 2 weeks?
It's hard to say because Germany always tries to have a course of actions where they see what happens and try to cope with situations in a way which is good for the future, which means that Germany tries to employ a system. And this system isn't working right now as we see it here. So people who were rejected, whose asylum request was rejected, have to leave the country. This is what the people are saying. This is what the government has to do in the next time.
And what's the public mood? Are fingers being pointed at, as one would imagine, at the government?
Actually, yes. This is a situation where something like that started, but not from the whole society. So people try also to help the government by understanding how the situation is. This was one suicide bomber, and he was doing it for the Islamic State. Now the question from the public is, how does the government cope with situations like that, and how will it protect its people in the future?
Mike Samuel Delberg, thank you for providing this analysis from Berlin. Now, the lone wolf attack is a growing global phenomenon based on recent terror attacks that are carried out by individuals inspired rather than organized fighters operated by a cell. Anna Ehrenheim spent the day with an IDF unit dealing with this issue and brought the following report.
Nice, Orlando, Magnonville, Würzburg, Munich, all deadly attacks, all carried out by lone wolves. A phenomenon around for decades, but one which is becoming increasingly popular across the globe. Israel itself is experiencing its own wave of violence. Since September 2015, Palestinian youth have stabbed, run over, and even shot Israeli soldiers and citizens based on incitement and inspiration.
If you don't have an organization, so you don't have the signature of the preparedness of the specific attack.
And what adds to the problem, it's almost impossible to detect these lone wolves before an attack.
If a 14-year-old kid, or sadly, unfortunately, a girl, just decide in the same morning that she's going to stab or do something because she's under the inspiration of you'll tell me what exactly.
Terrorists want to create anxiety. The fear from terror is a rational thing, and it's even a good thing because it keeps the public relatively vigilant. Anxiety from terror, which paralyzes you, prevents you from preserving a normative way of life. That's something very problematic that enables terror's victory. The Israelis are very experienced in this as well.
The perpetrators of Orlando, Magnonville, and Würzburg had all pledged their allegiance to the Islamic State, but that merely showed their support for the group. They all lacked any real support from IS, using only their religion and jihadist ideology as the reason behind their attacks. IS has taken credit for all lone wolf attacks in the past year. All except Munich. 35% of lone wolf attacks were carried out by individuals who suffered from mental health disorders.
The latest information is that he received medical psychiatric treatment. This is only provisional information, but it seems to be a case of depressive illness.
Israeli intelligence officers find the same trend within attacks on their own soil. Between October 2015 and January 2016, 40% of attackers were later found to have suicidal motives. Suicide by IDF. While jihadist ideology is a common reason behind attacks of this nature, the previously unexplored aspect of mental health disorders poses a whole new set of challenges.
And defense correspondent Anna Ehrenheim joins us in studio to discuss exactly this. You spent the day with the IDF, with the unit of the Israel Defense Forces. This is a global phenomenon, but how is Israel tackling this term being used globally, the lone wolf attack?
Well, like I said in the report, we see many of the attacks, if not most, carried out by lone wolves, individuals who have no affiliation to any group such as Hamas. And these individuals, like in the report, many of them have had mental health issues, and the Israeli army has many Palestinians under surveillance. And they said that if individuals show the risk of mental health, they go higher on the list as a potential attacker.
And what's the difference, would you say, between lone wolf attacks in Israel and those that are carried out in the other attacks you mentioned, Orlando being one of them?
Well, here in Israel, let's say the Palestinian community, the Palestinian society, a lot of them say, well, we want, a shaheed, we want to become a martyr. And in Orlando, you don't have that same mentality. You don't have everyone saying, yes, I want to become a martyr. And so in Orlando, when it comes to the mental health aspect, that is more of a forefront, whereas in the Palestinian society, it's not something that's really brought out. It's not something that's, I would say, perhaps acceptable.
And very quickly, security services often say they cannot monitor everyone. Not everyone can be under surveillance. What's the Israeli take on this?
Of course, you can't monitor everyone. But when people do fit a certain profile, where the attackers usually, we see males under the age of 24 being the majority of attackers. Of course, women and older individuals also carry out attacks. But if you are a young male under the age of 24 and you have had previous exposure to incitement and you do have that mental health disorder, then that's something that will definitely catch the eye of the army.
And Aaron, I want to thank you for this report. Very important on this global phenomena that everyone in the world globally is experiencing. We're going to take a 2-minute break. When we come back, we're going to have a report on Elor Zaria, the soldier standing trial for killing a subdued Palestinian. We're going to talk about the ongoing crackdown in Turkey following the failed coup. And of course, we're going to weigh in back in Philadelphia at the Democratic National Convention. All this in just 2 minutes. Don't go anywhere.